Hi, I'm Marla, and yes, I showed up to my sister's wedding, uninvited. They told everyone I didn't want to come, that I was too angry, too broken from the war, but they didn't know I had the text that proved they shut me out on purpose. What hurts more than being excluded is realizing your own family rewrote you out of the story and made you the villain in theirs. They used my service, my silence, and then told the world I was the unstable one. So how do you respond when your truth is edited out of your own life? Would you still show up, or would you finally speak? The morning sun crept through the blinds, painting long shadows across my kitchen floor. I had just poured myself a cup of lukewarm coffee and was flipping through a few bills when I saw it, an envelope from my dentist, but not what I was waiting for. Not today. I slid the rest of the mail aside and picked up my phone. Maybe it got lost. Maybe she sent it digitally. Callista had always been more tech-savvy than I was. I tapped open Facebook and, without even searching, there it was. A smiling photo of Callista in a white lace gown posted by her maid of honor. So excited for next weekend, celebrating love and family. My thumb froze above the screen. I blinked. Then I looked again. Next weekend. Wedding. No mention of me. No tag. No invite. Nothing. I took a long breath, trying to push down the wave rising inside my chest. It wasn't just the absence of an invitation. It was the public nature of it all. The knowledge that everyone else already knew, that I had been silently passed over, like dust on a shelf. It wasn't a fight that split us. Not really. We'd grown distant after Mom died, and Dad, well, he had a way of folding into himself, shutting doors quietly that never reopened. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This felt like a choice. A few minutes later, as if on cue, my phone buzzed with a message from Dad. Just one sentence. I don't think it's best for you to attend. No, hello, no explanation. Just that cold, clinical, like a dentist appointment had been canceled. My fingers hovered over the screen as I reread it, trying to make it sound different. Better, softer, but it was just what it was. Exclusion wrapped in etiquette. I thought back to Thanksgiving, the last time we were all in the same room. Callista had made a comment, something sharp and politically barbed, and I'd stood up for Miss Deering, an old neighbor who'd served with me. Dad didn't say a word then, just stared at his plate. Maybe that was it. Maybe that one moment defined me forever in his eyes. Or maybe I'd always been the problem. I wandered into the living room, the same room I'd returned to after Iraq, empty and echoing and too quiet. I scrolled again. My thumb moved on its own, numb and instinctive. Then I stopped. There was Callista, standing at a podium in a pre-wedding event. The video's caption read, "Proud to receive the Military Service Community Award." I watched as she spoke about sacrifice, duty, and legacy. Her words rang familiar. Too familiar. They were mine. She'd borrowed whole lines from the interview I did with Veterans Network 2 years ago, word for word. My story, my voice. Just with her face. It wasn't enough to shut me out. She had to wear my past like a gown. A tight knot formed in my throat. I paused the video and closed the app. It was suddenly too quiet in the house again. I stared at the wall clock. It ticked evenly, like none of this mattered. I picked up my phone and typed, "Why didn't I get an invite?" I stared at it, then deleted it. That's how it always went. Keep it quiet. Keep the peace. Don't stir things up. Don't be the drama. Later that afternoon, I saw Ruthie, my neighbor, as she watered her peonies. "You going to the Shipman wedding?" she asked with a grin. I blinked. "You heard about that?" "Oh, everyone has. It's the talk of the block. You must be so proud." I smiled, nodded, walked back inside before my throat betrayed me. In the kitchen, I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. The door bumped something on the way back. A framed photo clattered to the ground. It was the one of me, Callista, and Mom, taken right after we both joined the army. The glass was cracked down the middle, slicing right through our mother's smile. I knelt down, staring at it for a moment. Then I picked up my phone again, my voice steady this time. "Maybe I'll go anyway. The hallway closet was more of a time capsule than a storage space. I hadn't opened it in years. The hinges creaked in protest as I pulled the door wide, sending a small puff of cedar-scented dust into the air. My fingers brushed past winter coats, an old flannel shirt I used to wear when Mom and I would rake leaves together, and finally, the garment bag I was searching for. The dress was there, neatly zipped in its protective plastic like it had been waiting for this moment. Simple, navy blue, floor length, something I'd worn once to a military gala. Elegant without being flashy. I held it up to myself in the hallway mirror, the soft fabric whispering across my skin. It still fit, barely. As I moved a few hangers aside to put the dress back temporarily, I saw the shadow box behind them, its corner poking out like a forgotten memory begging for air. I slid it out gently. Inside was my service ribbon bar, a few commendation medals, and 2 tarnished dog tags. One was mine, the other belonged to Travis Quinn. He was the kind of soldier who could make you laugh while stitching up your wound, the kind who never made it home. I hadn't spoken his name aloud in years. I cradled the tags in my hand, letting the metal warm against my skin. Guilt curled its way up my spine, as it always did when I thought of him. I was alive. He wasn't. And yet, my family had barely said a word about my return. No welcome banner, no backyard barbecue, just silence. Mom had been proud. She'd kept a copy of every article I'd been quoted in, even when they didn't mention me by name. But Dad? The day I came home, he didn't even put down his coffee. I set the box gently back on the shelf. There was no room for mourning now. Later that afternoon, I called Erica. It only rang once. "Well, it's about damn time," she said. I didn't even need to explain. I just said, "I think I'm going," and she was already cursing on my behalf. "I'll pick you up at 8 and wear that dress, the one from the gala. We're going in like we own the place." "I can drive." "Absolutely not. You're making an entrance, not an Uber stop." She hung up and I stared at the screen, half smiling. Erica had a way of making the impossible feel like a pep rally. True to form, she showed up at my house in her old army green pickup, honking twice before barging in through my front door. She tossed a box onto my couch. I polished them myself. Boots. Yours were tragic. Inside were a pair of gleaming black combat boots, practically winking under the lamplight. "You're trying to make a statement?" "No," she grinned. "I'm making sure they hear it when you walk in." We clinked beer bottles in the kitchen. Neither of us said the word wedding. Instead, she helped me steam the dress and suggested a soft updo for my hair. She was furious for me, but too loyal to say it out loud. That kind of love doesn't shout. It shows up with boots and a ride. Around dusk, my neighbor Barb caught me outside while I was clipping my hedges. "I heard about the wedding," she said carefully, like tiptoeing through broken glass. "Walter said you didn't want to come. Said you thought it would be too hard on everyone." I didn't flinch. I just went inside, printed out the text Dad had sent me, folded it twice, and tucked it into my purse like a shield. Later that night, I opened my mother's jewelry box. I hadn't touched it since she passed. There, nestled in its velvet cradle, was her gold locket. Inside was a picture of us 3, Mom in uniform, me in fatigues, and Callista at her high school graduation. I fastened it around my neck. I stood in front of the mirror, the dress now draping over me like armor, the boots grounded beneath. The text still burned in my mind. "I don't think it's best for you to attend," I whispered, steadying my voice. "I'm here to celebrate my sister. Nothing more." Saturday morning came fast. Dry heat already blanketed the Colorado skies as Erica's pickup pulled into my driveway. She whistled when she saw me. "Well, damn, Commander." "I wouldn't cross you at the reception line." I gave her a half smile, climbed in beside her, and we were off, tires kicking up dust on the quiet rural road. The sun glinted off the metals still pinned neatly to my small clutch bag. We drove in silence until we turned onto Highway 14, and there it was, tall, tacky, and impossible to miss, a billboard. "Congrats, Callista Bryce," it read, in swooping pink letters. Balloons floated at the corners of the sign, white doves and pastel ribbons. My name wasn't there. My stomach twisted. I leaned back against the seat, gripping my purse tighter. That billboard had to cost money. I remembered how Dad refused to co-sign Callista's college loan. I remembered working nights just to help cover her last semester. And now? She knew you'd see that, Erica said quietly. I nodded. The venue came into view, a country-style barn dressed to the nines with floral arches and fairy lights, all the guests already buzzing. Erica slowed the truck. Are you sure you're ready for this? I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and adjusted Mom's locket around my neck. As ready as I'll ever be. The gravel crunched beneath Erica's tires as we pulled into the vineyard's parking lot. From a distance, the estate looked like something out of a bridal magazine. Sunlight glinting off wine glasses, silk ribbons fluttering from rustic wood beams, and rows of white chairs arranged like soldiers awaiting orders. But to me, it felt like enemy territory. A young woman in a headset stepped toward us as soon as we opened the truck doors. She glanced at her clipboard and frowned. I'm sorry, I don't see your names on the guest list. Erica's brows shot up. I stayed calm. I pulled the folded paper from my jacket pocket and handed it to her. Callista's RSVP confirmation, sent from her wedding email. I watched the girl scan it, her lips parting slightly. She didn't apologize, just waved us through with a forced smile. The kind people wear when they're following orders they don't agree with. Erica leaned in as we passed. It's like walking into a war zone without body armor. Inside, the cool air of the barn hit me like a wall. The place was gorgeous, draped in soft lights and eucalyptus garlands. Guests milled about, sipping wine and complimenting the floral arrangements. I caught a few glances, some curious, others guarded. Then I saw Leora. She was by the drinks table, swirling champagne in a flute. Her face lit up when she saw me, a small step forward, then stopped, mid-stride, as our father approached from the side. The warmth drained from her expression like someone flipping a switch. She turned her body slightly, shielding herself, her smile now plastic. I didn't think you'd come, she said, eyes darting toward him. I RSVP'd, weeks ago. My tone was even. You should have told Dad. Her voice dropped. You know how he gets. I studied her carefully. Same hazel eyes, same freckles across her nose. We used to share secrets under bunk beds and giggle through thunderstorms. He's not the gatekeeper of my life anymore, I replied. Her jaw tightened. Then she nodded almost imperceptibly and turned away. I needed air. I wandered past the dance floor and out toward the vineyard rows. Beyond the noise, I could breathe again. The sun was warm on my back. But memory has its own kind of weight. The rows of vines blurred into a memory, dust, sweat, and the stifling heat of Afghanistan. I was leading a rescue operation when the satellite call came through. My mother had collapsed, something cardiac, serious. I'd requested emergency leave, but my CO shook his head. Mission first, he said. My father never reached out. No email, no call. Just silence. It was the kind of quiet that eats you from the inside, a void where comfort should be. I remember thinking, even back then, if I died out there, would he say anything? Would he even know how? The string music from the barn wafted back across the fields, yanking me out of the memory. Back inside, I hovered near the hors d'oeuvres table, pretending to debate between brie and cheddar. A man with a cane approached. He looked to be in his late 60s, tall with military posture despite the limp. You're Marla Shipman, right? He asked. I nodded cautiously. He straightened. Then, sharply, crisply, he saluted. I froze. He lowered his hand. My son served under you, Corporal Dean Myers. You pulled him out after that IED hit. The air caught in my throat. I got the RSVP list from a friend who works catering, he continued. Saw your name. I told my wife, that woman saved my boy. I need to shake her hand. I gripped his hand tightly, words lost somewhere in my chest. He added, voice softening. Dean still talks about you. Says you were the only one who kept your head when things got bad. For the first time that day, I felt like I existed. And like I wasn't a ghost hovering outside someone else's celebration. Erica appeared beside me and nudged my elbow. That's your real family, right there. I looked at the man again, eyes stinging. Maybe she was right. The laughter came in waves, some real, most rehearsed. I stood at the edge of the cocktail patio, clutching my glass like it might anchor me to this moment, to this place that wasn't mine anymore. Erica lingered close by, a silent sentinel in boots more polished than my father's love had ever been. As I approached a small group gathered near the fire pit, their conversation stopped mid-sentence. Eyes flicked toward me, then away. One woman, probably a cousin I hadn't seen since she was missing her front teeth, tilted her head and said, "Didn't think you'd actually show your face." The glass chilled my fingers, but my voice didn't shake. I've earned the right to be anywhere I damn well please. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. Their silence confirmed everything. Callista appeared from behind a linen curtain, radiant and blinding in her lace and satin. She didn't approach with joy or surprise. No sisterly warmth, just a glance, then a pivot toward me. Her voice barely moved the air between us. "This isn't about you. Please don't ruin it." I almost laughed. Almost. "You mean by existing?" I whispered back, but she had already turned, the hem of her dress sweeping away the space between us like it was dirt. Erica appeared at my elbow. "She acts like you're a bomb about to go off." "I'm the wrong one to worry about," I said, my mouth dry. "I've already exploded, years ago." The sun had dipped low, shadows long and crawling across the vineyard lawn. String lights blinked to life as we were ushered to our dinner tables. I found mine, far from the head, next to Erica and a family friend who offered only tight smiles. I could feel the chill of being strategically placed like a side dish nobody asked for. Speeches began. My father stood with a glass of red in his liver-spotted hand. "To my beautiful daughters," he said, his eyes grazing past me. "To Callista, the heart of this family, and to Leora, always our bridge." Cheers and camera flashes followed. Then came the pause and the dig. "And to, well, the rest of us, who chose different paths." Laughter, the nervous kind, danced through the tables like static. I didn't blink, didn't twitch, just lifted my glass, looked him square in the eye and said, "To paths that saved lives." Erica's hand found mine beneath the tablecloth. "You don't flinch," she whispered. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The sting behind my eyes was answer enough. Later, under the guise of a restroom break, I intercepted my father by the dim corridor near the kitchen entrance. He looked surprised, but only for a second. That same indifferent smirk he'd worn the day I shipped out re-emerged, like muscle memory. "You've said enough without saying anything for years," I began, my voice steady but thick. He looked past me, like I was blocking a view he didn't want to see. "You're not part of this family anymore." I felt the floor pitch beneath me, but my boots held. "Maybe not. But you can't erase me. I'm the chapter you buried but never finished reading." He opened his mouth, then closed it. No retort, no apology, just silence. And in that silence, I heard everything. The string lights above flickered in the breeze, casting swaying shadows over the ground. I stood behind the barn, my fingers clutched around my mother's locket like it was the only anchor left in a sea that kept trying to drown me. The music from the reception was faint, muffled by distance and the weight pressing on my chest. Erica found me there, leaning against the wood, watching the sky pretend like nothing was wrong. "You did your part," she said gently, crossing her arms as she studied me. "You showed up. Now what?" I didn't answer right away. I was caught between wanting to scream and wanting to disappear. That speech. My father's words. The laughter. The erasure. "What happens if I stay quiet, Erica?" I asked. She didn't flinch. "Then they win. Again." I nodded, slow at first, then with growing certainty. Silence had never protected me, only buried me. "I'm going to speak." Erica's brows lifted, cautious. "You sure?" Because once it's out there, it can't be taken back. They don't deserve my truth, I said, voice hoarse. But maybe I do. The moment I walked back into the reception area, the music had dipped and the DJ announced that anyone who wanted to share a blessing or memory was welcome to the mic. I didn't hesitate. I walked forward and took the mic with a calm I didn't feel. The chatter faded like mist in the morning sun. Every pair of eyes slowly found me, even his. I wasn't going to say anything, I began, scanning the guests. But I think my mother would have wanted me to. Callista, still in her glittering gown, froze mid-conversation. I want to honor her tonight. She raised 3 daughters with dignity, discipline, and a fierce sense of loyalty. She served this country and her family, and never once asked for recognition. My voice wavered, but I pushed through it. Not all of us here were raised on kindness. Some of us raised ourselves on survival. And while today's celebration is for love, I think love has room for truth. A silence settled over the crowd, taut and fragile. I handed the mic back and walked off before I could crumble. But I didn't. I felt steady. Until Callista took the mic. Her smile was wide, gracious, polished. Thank you all for being here tonight. Especially those who came with open hearts. She looked directly at me. Some people mistake bitterness for bravery. But today isn't about old wounds. It's about moving forward. Applause rose, thin and uncertain. Erica leaned in behind me. That was a calculated strike. I didn't respond, not because I had nothing to say, but because my chest was burning too hot to form words. I clenched my jaw and turned away. We slipped from the crowd, finding a quiet corner by the old wine barrels. That's when Erica's phone buzzed. She looked at it, blinked. You need to see this, she said, holding it out. A screenshot. A text. From Leora. Just make sure she doesn't show. If Marla's there, Callista can't use the whole military values thing for the grant committee. It'll mess up everything. My breath caught. She sent it to me by mistake, Erica said softly. I read it again and again, then looked at Erica. I wasn't just cut out. I was rewritten. It wasn't about not being invited. It was about being erased. The barn doors creaked as I stepped out, the night air slicing through my dress like a blade. I still held Erica's phone in my hand, the damning message from Leora glowing on the screen. We had to make sure Marla didn't show up. Callista's military rep was cleaner without her. Cleaner, as if I were the smudge on their family portrait. My own flesh and blood chose to erase me. I hit call before my mind could catch up with my anger. Leora, I said the moment she answered, voice sharp. Don't lie. Was that text real? A beat of silence, then a shaky breath. Marla, it's not what you think. It was just to avoid drama. You know how Dad gets. Callista's big day. I cut her off. It's always someone else's big day. Yours, Callista's, Dad's pride. When is it ever mine? She stammered. I didn't mean it like that. But you did, I said, the phone trembling in my grip. You meant every word. I hung up. For the first time in years, I didn't cry after a conversation like that. I didn't feel small. I felt ready. I walked back inside, heels striking the wooden floor like gunshots. The reception was winding down. A few guests milled near the dance floor. Others laughed too loudly at the bar. Erica caught my eye from across the room and gave the smallest nod. I strode straight to the mic. There were no warm-up jokes, no softening phrases, just my voice. I didn't come here to burn bridges, I said, the crowd freezing mid-conversation. But turns out I was never invited across them. I held up Erica's phone. This is a message my sister accidentally sent. A message that confirms what many of you already suspected. My family didn't want me here. Not because I've done something unforgivable, but because I remind them of something they want to forget. Whispers rose like wind in dry grass. I fought for this country. I served while others posted filtered pictures and planned brunches. I missed birthdays, funerals, my own mother's last breath. And I came back expecting something as simple as dignity. But dignity is not handed out like wedding favors, it's reclaimed. No one moved. And tonight, I finished, lowering the phone, I reclaim mine. I walked away from the stunned silence. But Walter, of course, couldn't let me have the last word. He was there, waiting near the edge of the room. "You're mentally unwell," he snapped. "That war rewired you, always needing attention, always embarrassing us." Erica was beside me before I could blink, her phone held up. Recording. I met his eyes and said, "Maybe I was rewired. Rewired to stop fearing men like you." His face twisted. He saw Erica's camera, turned on his heel, and disappeared into the dark. Outside, the air felt cleaner, sharper. Erica and I walked toward her truck. We passed a young woman clearing tables, barely out of college, if that. She looked up. "Marla Shipman?" I stopped. "I read about you once," she said. "Helmand Province, right?" "The night op?" I nodded. She smiled. "My brother said someone like you saved his best friend. Thank you." I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. As we drove away, the lights of the vineyard faded behind us. No applause, no parting words, just clarity. I woke up with a knot in my stomach before I even opened my eyes. The sun filtered softly through Erica's spare bedroom curtains, but nothing about the day felt light. My phone buzzed violently on the nightstand, text after text, voicemail after voicemail. I sat up slowly, dreading what I already suspected. "Hey," Erica said softly, nudging the door open with her elbow and a coffee mug in hand. Her face said it all. Something exploded overnight. She handed me the mug and sat on the edge of the bed. "I think you need to see this." A video. Callista's face filled the screen, puffy-eyed but poised. Soft piano music underscored her voice. "Families are complicated," she said, pausing like she was struggling through emotion. Some wounds don't heal when you're around those who refuse to grow." Photos of us as kids played over the screen, baking cookies, riding bikes, Halloween, and matching witch costumes. I hadn't seen some of them in years. And then her voice continued. "Sometimes we lose the people we love to bitterness." My throat dried as I read the comments scrolling beneath it. Hundreds already. "She's so brave." "Heartbreaking." "Prayers for healing." "I had a sister like this too." "So toxic." Erica's face was stiff with anger. "She's rewriting the entire story, Marla, and people are eating it up." I didn't speak. I couldn't. That familiar numbness crawled up my chest like frostbite. Not rage, not grief, just cold. Then came the letter. Erica brought it in from the mailbox, frowning. "This one's from the VA." I opened it with trembling fingers. The words swam as I read them, my heart pounding louder than my thoughts. Walter had filed a complaint. He was questioning my mental stability, citing erratic public behavior, inability to regulate emotion, and potential untreated PTSD. They were trying to make me disappear, again, but this time with paperwork. "I'm going to kill him," Erica hissed. "No," I said, folding the letter carefully, deliberately. "I'm going to call Kenji." It had been a few years, but Kenji answered like no time had passed. "Hey, Commander," he said with a slow grin in his voice. "Thought I'd hear from you eventually." "I need a favor," I said. "Walter's using the VA system to smear me. He's saying I'm unstable." Kenji's voice hardened. "He's weaponizing your service? That's low, even for him." He promised to draft a statement affirming my leadership, clarity, and fitness during every deployment. "But maybe it's time," he said, "to stop letting them speak first. Tell your story, Marla." Before they write the last word. That evening, Erica set up her phone on a tripod in her backyard, between the sunflowers and the rusted barbecue grill. No makeup, no dramatic lighting, just me and the quiet hum of cicadas. I pressed record and exhaled. You've seen a version of me, I began. The one edited with piano music and pictures from a childhood I don't remember the same way. You've heard about my anger, my distance, my bitterness, but here's what you didn't see. I talked, not to defend myself, but to reclaim myself. I shared the story of Afghanistan, the silence from home when my mother died, the way coming back felt like landing in enemy territory, the nights I spent alone while my sisters celebrated holidays without me, the sacrifices I made to fund their futures, and the way they erased mine. And finally, I'm not telling this to burn anyone down. I'm telling it because when you silence someone long enough, they forget what their voice sounds like. I looked into the lens. This is what mine sounds like. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the gauze curtains in Erica's guest room, bathing the walls in gold. I hadn't slept much. My mind was still playing reruns of Callista's edited video. My face frozen mid-blink, my voice spliced into jagged sound bites, all tailored to make me look unhinged. But today, I had my own story. I sat in Erica's backyard, the camera perched on a small tripod she found in her closet. No scripts, no filters, no sad piano music, just my voice, and the weight of truth balanced against the Colorado breeze. I'm Marla Shipman, I began, fingers resting lightly on my mother's locket, and I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. I told them about my service. Not with medals or rank, but the moments in between. The quiet dignity of folding letters I never sent, the heat of the desert sun on my back. The time I stayed behind while my mother was dying because I was the one who signed the mission order. I held up my shadow box and then the email from Callista, a real RSVP, time-stamped and undeniable. You didn't see that version of me, I said softly. Because someone made sure you wouldn't. That night I didn't check the comments, but Erica did. By morning she brought me coffee and her phone. Read this, she said. The first comment was from another veteran. This woman saved my nephew's unit in Helmand. She doesn't brag about it. She just does the work. Respect. Another. So glad she's telling her story. So tired of families rewriting truth. And then, finally, a message from someone anonymous but tenderly worded. Thank you for your truth, not your erasure. For the first time in days, I smiled, genuinely, without having to pretend I was fine. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. Leora, her voice trembled on the other end. I saw your video. I waited. I should have stood up for you, Marla. I didn't. I was scared. I've been scared of him my whole life. I didn't say anything at first. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't cruel. We're not kids anymore, I said finally. If we want to fix this, we start from here, not the wedding, not the past, here. We agreed to meet. No church, no fancy outfits, no facade, just two women, both bruised by the same silence, ready to name it out loud. A few days later, a local news station picked up the video. Apparently, a friend of the veteran I met at the wedding forwarded it. They called, asking for an interview. I hesitated, but Erica nudged me. This isn't about them anymore, she said. It's about healing. And so I spoke again. On camera. In my own words, not to fight, but to remember, to reclaim. A week after the wedding, the family church held a service for Veterans Day. No announcement, no spotlight, just a quiet moment in the middle of the ceremony when my video played, right after the hymn. People stood when my name appeared on the screen. Some placed hands over their hearts. I sat at the back, unnoticed until that moment. But I didn't need applause. I didn't need acknowledgement from Walter, who sat stone-faced in the front row. Yet, as the video faded to black, I saw something in his expression shift. A flicker, no bigger than a blink, but real. I didn't mistake it for forgiveness. I didn't need that either. As I stepped outside into the crisp air, the sunlight catching on my boots, I knew one thing with certainty. Presence, not permission, defines belonging. The house hadn't changed, though the silence inside it had grown heavier. I stepped through the doorway of my childhood home, the creak of the hinges whispering a greeting I didn't particularly want to hear. The same faded photographs lined the hallway. My mother holding Callista as a baby, Leora on her first bike, me in my army uniform before deployment. We were all frozen in time, smiles suspended above truths no one ever spoke aloud. I walked slowly, the air dense with the ghosts of moments that never quite got resolved. My boots thudded quietly on the hardwood floors. A light layer of dust covered the entryway table, where Mom used to keep a bowl of cinnamon potpourri. The scent was gone now, replaced by something emptier. My fingers grazed the edge of a shelf in the hallway where an old voice recorder sat wedged between forgotten cookbooks. I didn't remember seeing it before. I pressed play. A scratchy recording crackled to life. Laughter. My own, no more than 5 or 6 years old. In the background, Mom's voice sang a lullaby off-key, and someone, my father, clumsily told a knock-knock joke. The recording ended abruptly. It felt like a punch in the chest. They had tried once, hadn't they? Or at least something that resembled trying. Maybe some absences weren't about punishment or neglect. Maybe they were about people who simply didn't know how to show up. But that didn't make the silence any softer. Walter asked me to meet him for lunch. I agreed, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to look him in the eye. He chose a booth in a small cafe on Main Street, the kind of place where the napkins still came in dispensers and old veterans wore ball caps stitched with the names of wars we never talk about. He greeted me like nothing had ever gone wrong. "You look good," he said, sliding a menu toward me. "I'm not here to eat," I replied. The waitress brought coffee. Neither of us touched it. Walter leaned back. "You've always had a flair for drama, Marla. You were a tough kid, stubborn. You still are." My jaw clenched. "You called me here to insult me?" "No," he said. "I called you here because your little video stunt made things complicated. People are asking questions." "I told the truth," I said. "You told your version," he replied. I leaned forward. "This isn't just my version. It's years of being left out, silenced, and then turned into the family scapegoat. You didn't just ignore me, you rewrote me. You used my service as a backdrop for someone else's narrative. That's not complicated, Dad. That's cruel." He blinked but said nothing. I stood up, leaving the coffee untouched. "You don't have to understand it, but I won't let you define it." And I left, the bell on the door jingling a sharper farewell than his words ever could. A few days later, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakably Leora's, tight, careful, afraid of taking up space even on the page. I opened it with trembling hands. "I saw your video. I've watched it 5 times. I was afraid, Marla. I didn't stand up for you because I thought if I did, they'd treat me the same way. I didn't want to be erased. I wanted to belong. I thought silence was safe. But I was wrong. You were always the brave one. I'm sorry I let you carry it alone." I reread those lines over and over until the tears blurred the ink, not out of betrayal, but for the years lost to the fear of telling the truth. A week later, I walked through the community garden just before sunset. The air was warm, the soil freshly turned. I hadn't been here in months, but the benches still faced west, catching the last golden slant of daylight. I found the empty bed I used to tend, still labeled with my name, weathered but intact. I crouched beside it and pulled Leora's letter from my jacket pocket. Folded it, placed it gently into the earth, and covered it with the roots of a new tomato plant. Then I whispered softly, "From roots that nearly killed me, I'll grow my own." Sometimes healing doesn't roar. Sometimes it whispers through soil and sun, through stories retold and silence reclaimed. The wounds may never fully close, but I've learned how to carry them, without letting them break me. The first morning in my new apartment began with the scent of pine through the cracked window and the faint hum of someone walking their dog down the hall. Portland was cooler than Colorado this time of year, and that suited me just fine. My modest one-bedroom space didn't need to impress anyone. It was mine, and after everything, that was enough. I'd found the place after 3 weeks of searching. Something quiet, with trees in view, and a kitchen that got morning light. The walls were a blank slate, and for once, I didn't rush to cover them. Instead, I unpacked slowly, box by box, letting each object I pulled out find its rightful place. I left the military shadow box in its crate. Not hidden, just not center stage. I began writing again. Morning started with coffee and a journal, the page catching my thoughts before the world could. Some days I'd cook breakfast and sit on the floor, eating by the sliding door, watching the mist roll down from the hills. There was a stillness in the air that felt like permission to begin again, not as someone defined by survival, but someone learning to live. The kitchen held a strange comfort. I used to avoid the act of cooking. It reminded me too much of my mother. But now, with my hands kneading dough or slicing herbs from the tiny balcony planter, I felt something else. I wasn't stepping into her shadow. I was planting my own roots in the same soil. It was a Tuesday when I met Gloria. I'd been collecting my mail, still in sweatpants and a paint-streaked t-shirt, when she approached me, short, silver-haired, wearing 2 different earrings and a cardigan that looked older than me. "Judy?" she said, squinting. "My heavens, I thought you were my niece." "No, sorry," I replied, already smiling. "But I'm Marla. Just moved in." She laughed and nodded. "Well, welcome, Marla. Not Judy. We have an art circle on Thursdays. You should come. We're terrible and proud of it." I nearly declined, instinctively. But something about the way she said it, so warmly, without expectation, made me pause. "I'll think about it," I said. That Thursday, I showed up. We gathered in a sunlit room at the local rec center, the smell of acrylic paint and instant coffee thick in the air. Some people sketched flowers. Others dabbed paint onto paper like it owed them money. I found myself holding a brush, not knowing what I'd paint, only knowing I wanted to try. By the end of the session, I'd made a rough stormscape, black lines across a sky the color of rust and lilac. No one asked what it meant, no one needed to. Each week I returned. Gloria would greet me with a wink and her "Marla not Judy" joke, and I'd pretend to roll my eyes. Sometimes we talked about nothing, other times about loss, about love that didn't look the way movies promised. One evening, my phone rang. "Leora." I answered. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied. We didn't talk about our father or the wedding. Instead, we talked about how the leaves were turning, how Leora was trying yoga again, and how her daughter drew a picture of Auntie Marla and a spaceship, which neither of us understood but both cherished. Before we hung up, Leora said, "I'm proud of you." "I'm learning to be proud of me too," I said. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't dramatic. It was enough. Later that month, I began teaching a weekly class at the center. Expressive arts for seniors, many of whom had stories heavier than mine but smiles just as bright. I guided them through abstract storytelling. No rules, just colors and truth. One afternoon, a woman named Elsie handed me a letter. "Your story gave me courage to face mine," it read. I sat in my car after class, holding that note like it was a medal. Maybe it was, because maybe legacy isn't about changing the world in sweeping gestures. Maybe it's about changing a single moment for someone else, showing them that survival isn't shameful, that healing isn't always loud. And maybe that's the legacy I needed all along. The envelope was thin, no return address, no markings, just my name, handwritten in a slanted cursive I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. My hands didn't tremble, but something inside me did. I sat by the window in my apartment as the Oregon rain pressed against the glass, rhythmic and soft. The seal peeled back like something sacred, delicate. Inside, a single page, yellowed at the edges, folded neatly in thirds. "Marla, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if I'll be brave enough to send it. But I need to write it, even if the paper is the only one who hears me. I didn't move. I read. Slowly, carefully. You were always strong. I don't just mean the medals or your decisions. I mean your core. And I didn't know how to parent that. I came from a world where daughters were quiet, where pride was shown in casseroles and clean curtains, not confrontation. I read it again. Once for the words, once for the ache. She talked about small moments, how she watched me pack for deployment in silence because she didn't trust herself to speak without crying. How she flinched at Walter's coldness but never stood between us. She admitted regret, not as an apology, but as a truth that had fermented in silence. I hope one day you'll see that my silence wasn't rejection, it was confusion. I didn't know how to mother someone stronger than I was. I folded the letter carefully, placing it back in the envelope. Then I picked up my keys. The drive to Eugene felt longer than it was. Gray skies hung low, casting the road in a soft, diffused light. I didn't bring flowers, just the letter. I didn't cry. I didn't even play music. I just listened to the soft swish of wipers and the wheels on wet asphalt. By the time I reached the cemetery, the rain had turned to mist. It wrapped around everything. Headstones, trees, my shoulders, as if to quiet the world for what needed to happen. Her grave was simple, just a small plaque, weathered but legible, no grand declarations, just her name and 2 dates that bookended a lifetime of mystery for me. I crouched down, the letter in my hand. My voice cracked the silence. They should have delivered this when it still mattered, I said softly, placing the envelope on the damp earth. But I guess late truth is better than none. I sat back on my heels. I read fragments aloud. You could have said that then. I needed this when I was 17. I wish you'd said you were confused instead of just absent. The mist settled into my hair, my collar. A shiver ran down my spine, but it wasn't the cold. I didn't forgive her. Not fully. Not today. But I saw her, not the mother I had needed, but the woman who struggled quietly. That had to be enough. I stood up slowly, placing a small stone on top of the envelope, just to keep it from blowing away, just to anchor it. I thought healing would feel like fireworks, I whispered. The rain began to pick up, light but persistent. I walked back to the car, not looking back. Turns out it's just rain you're no longer afraid of. The community garden was alive with early morning light, petals of daylilies and sunflowers stretching toward the sky as if celebrating something deeper than spring. I stood among them in quiet awe. This place, which once held only my grief, now pulsed with green life and the promise of renewal. I knelt by a row of tomato plants I'd planted last summer. Their leaves brushed my knees, reminding me of how far I'd come. From being erased to being visible, from silent hurt to steady resolve. My fingers traced the soil, warm, alive, offering comfort I once thought lost. Erica joined me, handing over a folded newspaper clipping. I opened it. Headline: Commander Shipman, From Ghost to Guardian. The article told a story of my service and return, of how one woman's courage had become an anthem in my community. I blinked back tears, not grief this time, but quiet triumph. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and let the garden hold me for a moment. Later that morning, I walked toward the Veterans Day ceremony at Columbia Park, a small civic stage set up near the War Memorial. Flags snapped in the breeze as families, veterans, and community leaders gathered under clear skies. I was there as a speaker. Wearing my uniform, pinned with its faded ribbons, I felt both rooted and ascendant. When my turn came, I stepped up, paused, and looked outward at the people gathered, faces lined with stories of struggle and belonging. I never asked permission to exist, I began. My voice was steady. For too long, I've held close doubts planted in me by others, not the community I served, but the family I wished would see me. I paused. Today, I stand because they never had the power to erase me. Not my uniform, not my service, not my story. Behind me, flags reflected sunlight, as if affirming the truth of my words. In the front row, I spotted Erica. She nodded, eyes glistening. And then, unexpected, a softened face among the crowd caught my attention. Callista. Her hands folded in her lap, lips pressed to a tight, uncertain smile. I didn't expect her presence, but there she was, present. My words echoed into quiet applause. Not raucous, but heartfelt. The kind that honors the honesty of survival. Afterward, blending with the crowd, I found Walter nearby. His posture was hesitant, aged by regret. You delivered," he said quietly. His voice cracked. I faced him, calm and resolute. "I didn't do it for you," I replied. "I did it for me." He nodded, something like relief or surrender on his face, though no words followed. That stillness marked a shift I didn't need to elaborate. As I walked off the stage, a veteran from the wedding, leaning on a cane, face weathered by time, stood suddenly and rendered a salute. Others followed, rising from their folding chairs to honor me. It wasn't a recognition I'd demanded. It was one I'd quietly earned. I tilted my head back just enough, tears blurring my vision, not from hurt, but from liberation. I let them fall. Here, in this moment, I stood fully seen. Sometimes healing doesn't come with fireworks or a parade. It comes in a quiet room, in a garden blooming out of broken soil, or in the silence that no longer hurts. Looking back, I used to believe I had to fight to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. But what I've learned is this: your worth is never determined by who chooses to leave you out. It's defined by the courage you choose to step into every single day. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own story, I want you to know your voice still matters. Your presence still matters, and even when the world tries to erase your contributions, you are still enough. So let me ask you, have you ever had to reclaim your own narrative, or been forced to rise in silence when others tried to speak over your truth? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from, or just type 1 if this story moved you in any way. If it didn't resonate with you, that's okay too. Let me know why and where you're tuning in from. This is a space for all of us to reflect, connect, and grow. If you found something powerful or healing in this story, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. That way, you won't miss the next one. We have more stories coming your way that might just be what someone needs to hear. Your story isn't over. Let's keep walking forward together.